Let's look at the view of relevant people on self-sufficiency. From the pension lawyers, nothing in the legislation suggests that a move to minimize dependence on employers' covenant will always be appropriate, and that trustees should be pushed in that direction. In short, self-sufficiency is not required by law. Aon is the actuary of UUK. They say risk metric A in 2020 valuation is highly sensitive to the input parameters, much in the same way as blighted test 1. Test 1 was responsible for 2017 deficit. First actuarial is the actuary of UCU. They say what is not reasonable in an open scheme like USS is for issues of self-sufficiency to override other issues such as affordability for the employers and active members, and the need for stability in the contribution rate. Later, I will come back to the point made by first actuary. Next slide, please. USS is an open scheme, and let's see what the pension regulator says about open scheme. David Fairs, he is the Executive Director of Regulatory Policy Analysis and Advice of the pension regulator. He wrote at the end of 2020, truly open schemes with a strong flow of new entrants, which is USS, might invest in more illiquid and volatile assets in the expectation of a higher return. They might anticipate that higher return and consequently set lower technical provisions. The rationale being that there is sufficient time for the scheme to ride out that volatility. Here, lower technical provisions means lower liability. Note the last sentence. Rationale based on economics and evidence can help a long way to resolve the disputes on USS. Discount rate is essentially a prudent estimate of investment return. The blue histogram on the right graph is USS discount rate since 2011. The orange histogram is the actual realized investment return on USS. The gray histogram on the far right uses the asset value after the rebound from the low of 2020 market because of the pandemic. You can see that how USS discount rate fall sharply over the years. Low discount rate gives rise to large liability and hence the scheme's deficit. The high realized investment return means fast rising asset value of USS, which in turn means falling required rate of investment return to pay for our pensions. This is illustrated in the chart in the middle. These graphs were published in the Royal Economic Society's newsletter. Financial Times seems to like it and wrote an article on it. I'm sorry to show off here, and let me read you an extract of the article. Woon Wong of Cardiff Business School argues compellingly that on sensible assumptions, the scheme is in comfortable surplus. Given the time horizons of the scheme, even a huge bear market could not threaten its ability to meet its obligations. The only assumption under which the USS scheme could fail is a permanent end of economic growth, which is overly pessimistic.
Some economists are now advocating a transition from attempts to achieve perpetual economic growth towards degrowth. And it would just be interesting to hear your thoughts on how the climate crisis might affect pension viability.
This is a very good question. The climate crisis, like many other crises, can be a source of growth itself, right? Growth derives from creativity, the innovations, right? It's not a good example, but look at the Second World War. Because of the war, there were lots of growth in the defense industry, although that is not something we like. Similarly, the climate crisis will force us to innovate, and that will create lots of job opportunities. Remember, the viability of the pension scheme is actually fundamentally, in the long run, depends on human activities. And from a financial viewpoint, these human activities is actually economic activities, right? Investments, right? Getting the money to deal with the climate crisis. So the climate crisis is not an issue for us. And the long-term growth depends on creativity, productivity, and that is something we human beings possess. Thank you.